I'm at San Francisco International Airport, SFO, the only airport I know of that has a yoga room. Might as well get some yoga in, right? My name is Dr. Popular, and you are watching PopCast, a crowd-sponsored yo-yo vlog. This week I went to Chicago, Illinois, during a literal polar vortex and interviewed Steve Brown because we both happen to be at the same event called Ord Camp, which is just this really weird, hard to explain thing with a lot of people. So I thought, hey, this is going to be a great time to talk to Steve. We'll get plenty of time to do an interview. It turns out it was a terrible idea. We're sort of hanging out for 48 hours doing just constant talks and workshops. But the hard part is it's super busy and we have FOMO and we're always worried about missing stuff. So it ended up being 4 a.m. On Saturday night, like 3 hours before Ord Camp ended, that Steve and I got together in a room and chatted. And by that time we were both really spent, and we didn't really get to much yo-yo tricks per se, but I asked Steve a lot of personal questions about how yo-yoing's changed his life, just all sorts of cool stuff about his progress throughout yo-yoing. So to all the people who asked questions for me to ask to Steve, I dropped the ball. I didn't do it, but we did get some great interview in, so it's still a good video. If you want to see the answers to the questions you asked in the last video, you can go to patreon.com/docpop, and Steve's actually going to be writing his answers there in the comments to this video. So patreon.com/docpop. And also Steve donated this rad yo-yo, which I can't remember the name of, but it's a Caribou Lodge yo-yo. It's a prototype. The final version is going to be pretty different than this. So to find out how you can win a yo-yo, check out Patreon too. I'm going to be giving one of these away to a random sponsor of the show. So thanks for watching. Here's the interview with Steve. Yo, my name is Dr. Popular. I am here with Mr. Steve Brown, the creator of Counterweight, the 5A division. There was a gang sign for that, wasn't there?
No.
But I'm going to redo that. PopCast is a monthly-ish yo-yo vlog where we talk about yo-yo concepts, and every now and then I get to interview really interesting people like Steve Brown.
Hi.
Look at that. Just a bucket of interest.
So hella interesting.
So Steve is one of the organizers of the World Yo-Yo Contest in Cleveland this year, as well as like you've been obviously involved with the Federation for a while.
Yep.
You are I think of you most well known, in my mind, you are most well known for Counterweight, also known as 5A, also known as Frizzle Shizzle. What is Counterweight?
So Counterweight Yo-Yoing is one of the 5 contest styles of yo-yo play. And basically you have a weight tied to the end of the string, and you hold the weight while you're playing, and then during play you release the weight. And so all of the tricks are based off of the fact that you have a fully variable objects at the other end of the string, so you can use both ends of the string for tricks at the same time.
How did you come up with Counterweight?
Counterweight, yeah. So it was a totally dumb story. So I was trying to do these tricks called slippery eel, which you basically would just take the string off of your finger and then like swing it around your leg and then do a stupid pinwheel and then shoot it off into the air and then try and catch it in your pocket, and that was like the big end of your routine. And I wasn't very good at it, so what would happen is every time I would like swing it around my leg, the string would just like slide through my fingers, and then it would just shoot off down the hallway, and then I would feel like an idiot. It being the late 90s, I had a big giant wallet chain, and I had 2 canceled casino dice strung onto the wallet chain. So I took one of them off and tied it to the end of the string so that I would have something to catch as the string would like go by my hand. So, you know, at that point, I've got like a relatively hefty weight on the end of the string, and this is literally the dumbest origin story ever. I had this weight on the end of the string, I throw the yo-yo, and I sneezed. Achoo! And it did that. And then I swung it over to my other hand, and then I dropped it, and then basically I stood there for about 15 minutes just doing this.
He stole it.
Back and forth. And that is literally the origin of counterweight play.
This video is going to be full of noise.
The edits for this are going to be hilarious.
There's no edits. There's no edits. This is raw. This is my life now. This is a 30-minute video. Okay, so Steve made up this thing called Counterweight. In the beginning, it took off just like massively. Huge. Everybody, overnight, bam.
No, it was literally just like me and Chris Neff, and that was it.
Oh, just you two?
Yeah, pretty much. And then after like a few months, then Doc picked it up. And then for a couple of years, it was literally me and Chris Neff and Doc. And then we found out later that a handful of people in Japan had picked it up.
Ooh, they were crushing it.
And they were crushing it, but they weren't. We didn't know them, and we had no YouTube at the moment. So it was kind of a couple of years before we figured that out. And then they showed up and were like, "Oh, hey, yeah, we're totally into this. Also, we're 1,000 times better than you. Have a nice day." So that was super rad. Yeah, honestly, that was like it was a really cool thing to watch. Like all of a sudden, you know, it went from being the silly thing that three Midwestern white boys did to like this international like style.
You know, you've made it when you're big in Japan.
Yeah. Yeah, Terry was doing the electric fan stuff.
Electric fan.
Yeah, so it was, you know, like kind of like that business.
You can't do it either? I can't do it. That's always been a point of shame for me.
I can kind of...
Not the variations and stuff. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I can't do all the variations.
Yeah, you can't remount it to repeat.
Yeah, it's like super crazy.
It's so hard.
And it was my favorite thing about Counterweight at the time is that, and this was before the prevalence of YouTube and, you know, completely before Instagram existed, is that you still had regional styles of play. Mm-hmm. So everybody in Brazil had like a definitive style. Everybody in Japan had like a definitive style. And then in the US, like there was a East Coast style, there was a West Coast style, there was like a Midwest style. Like you could clearly see that people played differently. And with Counterweight, because there were so many additional variables there, the different styles of each individual player were completely different. So even though like Tyler Severance and John Robb like hung out and practiced together all the time, the way that they played was completely different. And then Dana Bennett was only a couple hours away from them, but the way he played was completely different. And then Makoto from Japan played completely different than Terry, even though they hung out and practiced together. And the tricks that you were doing looked nothing like the tricks I was doing, looked nothing like the tricks that Chris Neff was doing. So it was... even among wildly disparate styles between players, there was a massive, massive gulf between counterweight player styles, which for a few years there made it the single most exciting division.
God, it was so good. I mean, I don't want to be all nostalgic and be like, oh, it's over, but like 4A kind of was not awesome back then.
No.
And neither was 3A, but like 4A was sort of like not awesome, and 5A was like, I felt like the second most exciting thing, if not the most exciting. It was up there, right?
Yeah, it was for a while there. It was 1A, which has always like hands down been the most popular, and then 5A was like a very close second, and just a very different, like exciting kind of feel because there's a lot of new, like fresh rawness to it. And I would say that YouTube helped popularize yo-yos. It helped a lot of people get much better at it, and it definitely helped push innovation. But what it did do is it also homogenized trick styles.
Yeah.
So we lost the regional flavor, but what we gained is a ton of technical advancement. So kind of a trade-off, and it just sort of depends what's important to you as to whether or not that was a good thing or a bad thing.
Back then, they didn't even have Patreon, so no one could go to patreon.com/DocPop to help sponsor a show that they would then also... They didn't have YouTube.
Right. I mean, and that certainly would have been rad if they could have gone to patreon.com/DocPop to support like a small independent creator, you know, building, you know, really, truly unique content for yo-yo players worldwide.
Yeah. So it was, you know, it was a different time. It was weird. Let's talk about, you've been in manufacturing for a while. I feel like your biggest pivot, I was trying to... Pivet?
Is that how they say it in French? Pivet?
I'm gonna...
Bidet?
Yeah, Pivet.
Okay.
You went from Team Low C, where you had a prestigious VHS cassette that was Airware, Like that Veriflex like thing was airwear. And then things kind of fizzled out with Team Losi, and you went over to Duncan as like a kind of a big career thing, right? Like a lot of us have like multiple careers in our lives, and that was sort of like you were still a yo-yoer, but you were
that was supposed to be like my big move, and I lasted at Duncan for 6 years, which was approximately 5 years and 8 months longer than anybody expected.
I lost a lot of money on that bet.
I found out there was a pool going among multiple other people in the industry when I started working there as to how long I was going to last, and no one collected because I outlasted everyone's longest prediction by 3 years. The skills that I acquired working at Duncan definitely helped me kind of pivot into other industries, but it just ultimately, I am borderline unemployable. I am so much better off when I'm working for myself or with a very small team of like 3 to 5 people.
And you even fired yourself a couple times.
So I worked for Yo-Yo Factory for a while, and then kind of hit the point where I really wanted to be a little bit higher up in the organization. And so I had a good conversation with Hans and Ben and said, hey, I would really like a larger role. And they were like, well, technically we really only have 2 large roles here and we're in them. And there isn't really room for another one. And I was like, that is totally cool. I'm going to go do some stuff with my buddy in Canada. Love you guys, no hard feelings. And they're like, sweet, high five, that works great. And so I started working for Caribou Lodge. It was a very smooth transition, super friendly, and it actually my moving to Caribou Lodge specifically opened the door for Yo-Yo Factory and Caribou Lodge to start working together.
Yeah, which they happened.
So we ended up doing the whole base camp collaboration, which is
dope,
which is super rad, and we've even got more releases planned for that.
Speaking of Caribou Lodge, you have something exciting to show me. Tell me about this.
So this is a prototype of the new signature model for a Yumu Harada. I can't tell you what the name of it is yet because we have not named it yet. It is very much in the style of the Arctic Circle and Arctic Circle 2, which were previous signature models for 2015 World Yo-Yo Champion Zach Gormley. And it is kind of a significant refinement of what we were trying to accomplish with those yo-yos. We worked really, really, really closely with the Yumu on this. A lot of very, very, very small detail management on this, down to like every single little radius was like discussed and edited and modified. And
he had some digital calipers on his end, and
I mean, it was very, 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 very precise. This is not what the final production version is going to be. This is the very first prototype of the yo-yo. So this is somewhat different from what will eventually be available on shelves. And there were only 6 prototypes of this design made.
Rad. So this yo-yo is being donated by Caribou Lodge to help support PopCast. One of my Patreon sponsors is going to get entered. Anybody who sponsors at any level gets entered into a monthly giveaway. How many versions of a prototype do you usually go through for a yo-yo? Keeping in mind that hella delays the process for y'all, and it costs money.
For a player signature model, it's not uncommon to do at least 2 rounds of prototypes. And on occasion, we have done 3. But usually at the 3 point, we're like, all right, you need to, we need to figure this out like right now.
Yeah. It's got to be tough. Every time I do a yo-yo with, mostly with one drop, I feel like they nailed it from the start, and it's really weird for me because I'm like, this is great, but there's no way that's possible. Like, I think we should try changing something just so I know that it was great.
Sometimes it works. I mean, sometimes like we've gotten prototypes where we just went right into production at that point. And then other times you struggle with it. You know, some designs just want to happen, and other designs just really want to fight you.
Word up. So I usually like to talk about concepts. Like an idea kind of thing. Do you have anything that comes to mind that you're really interested in right now?
I super like yo-yo tricks.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
There used to be a popping trick. What was that? On a snap. Like a tension thing. Oh, I remember what that was.
There we go.
Whatever. It's not the size of the sound wave.
What we would do is you could just wrap it around these two fingers, and then you're going to spread those two fingers as you release the string. Yeah. Yeah.
Dude, this is a stereo mic.
If you happen to get somebody at just the right distance with this, and we would get people like right on the back of the ear. And it was devastating. There was a big trend at yo-yo contests for a couple of years of just like trying to actively hurt everyone around you, which was just foolish and awful.
Yeah.
So we would snap each other with the yo-yo strings, but then somebody realized that if you were playing off string and you popped the yo-yo up, you could snap it out, and if you got the string at just the right length, it would hit the axle, wrap, and you could wind it up, and it's a really difficult trick to hit consistently, but it is devastatingly cool on stage when somebody pops the yo-yo further out than you know they should and just goes bam, and it just pops right back to their hand. There were a couple of Japanese players, the team off-string guys, who would nail that trick, and it was just beautiful every time.
One of the things I always liked about freehand counterweight was the big motions. And so I definitely liked, the fully like letting go and kind of doing, aerial stuff like that. But I think one of my favorite kind of tricks is just call it sway. Just like it's a poi trick,
Yeah.
But it's just always been one of my favorites. Like I can really slow it down.
Yeah, it's super pretty.
And so just to kind of basically go over that concept. I don't know if this is going to help the tutorial or not. But yeah, you throw the yo-yo. You just kind of grab the strings and you do that. This is a terrible tutorial. You just kind of do this.
You just kind of do
that.
It's a field trick. It's one of those tricks where it's really difficult to break it down specifically. You just have to kind of fiddle around with it until you get the rhythm of it.
Really revolutionized the way we get knots. Steve's legacy. You never could have got this knot before.
You're welcome.
Okay. So trapeze off. And then usually what I do is after I go off, I also simultaneously kind of slack on this side, all in one motion. So bam, hit, which is maybe it changes direction, but it's also something you could do without hitting. But bam, and then you're just doing this weaving motion. The two spins are going, counter to each other, and a little flourish. Catch. That's just always been my go-to. Like
It's super pretty.
it is pretty. It's fun. I mean, once you learn it, it's just kind of like you do it with your eyes closed.
Yeah.
All right, let's.
All right, yeah. Give me the weight. Let me see. Favorite counterweight tricks.
Can't wait to show us the trick.
So I would say that my probably all-time favorite counterweight trick is still Super Hyper Magic Helicopter, which is created by Rafael Matsunaga.
Yeah.
And it is just absurdly fun to do. And when you show this to non-yo-yo players, they lose their damn minds. And then being practiced enough to just pull out of it at that speed makes me personally feel hella pretty.
Yeah.
Because it's like, and it feels so good to do. Yeah. I love it. Absolutely.
Can you break it down at all?
It is, let's see how slow I can do it. Very similar to sway, it is kind of a field trick, but what you want to do is, let's see if I can just isolate the somersault here. So what you're doing, let's see if I can, there we go. So what you're doing with part of the yo-yo is this. So if you look at it, the string is not twisting because it's essentially a pinch and just a basic somersault. So the string is not wrapping around anything and it's not twisting around anything, okay? And then the second component of that then is doing that while this is spinning around the top of it on a different plane.
Now, I like what you did there because I feel like that's how I learned it too. You started off on the same plane, and then you kind of gradually, and it's a rhythm thing, and then you just kind of, when you're learning it, you bring it up to the same plane.
Yeah, it definitely helps when you're first learning it to to just kind of, I mean, honestly, it's another one of those kind of timing tricks where you just have to sort of get into it and then sort of figure out the rhythm. But it really does help to, you know, to kind of work your way over a little bit.
And you could emphasize that, you could make it the trick, but ultimately, like that's the trick. You've got these two planes going, and I feel like before single A, freehand was one of the few things that actually had that multi-planular.
Yeah, it was
because everything usually is on this one plane,
right?
And you know, we could maybe do something like this, but we're still doing one plane. We just shifted the plane.
Yeah,
the plane,
boss.
Steve, it's been awesome having you. I do want to promote yoyonews.com.
Thank you.
Your news site, which is awesome. Like, not only are you, like, you know, working for a yo-yo company, but you are also doing a lot of hard work, you know, promoting other people's videos and sharing awesome stuff. Stuff that is not Caribou Lodge. Like, you're promoting everybody, and it's a rad news site. I'm glad it's still around, and
thank you.
You know, because I miss there were some other news blogs around, and they're gone, and I'm so glad that you're keeping that up. Caribou Lodge has this new yo-yo coming up, but who's the player again?
Ayumu Harada.
Yes. And we don't have a name for it yet, but keep your eye out for this beautiful yo-yo in it. Version 2 coming out soon.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks. High five. And that's it for this episode of PopCast. Usually we focus more on concepts and tricks. It's fun, though, to be able to talk to yo-yoers who've been around for a while and get a whole different perspective. You know, I want to keep PopCast changing and kind of keep doing weird things. So I appreciate you asking the questions for Steve that you did and for sponsoring the show. And be sure to check out more of the episodes on YouTube and patreon.com/DocPop for more info on how you could win this rad Caribou Lodge yo-yo. Word to your mother.